when talking about Guerlilas by Guerlain. This was released in 1930. The notes in it are lilac, bergamot, aldehydes, jasmine, heliotrope, lily of the valley, violet, deer musk, and civet. Interestingly to me, this smells a lot less old school than a lot of vintage scents of this era, and even ones that came out, 25 years later. That's not an insult to the ones that do smell more explicitly old school, so to speak. Many of those are beautiful, undeniably classic, but it is interesting to smell one that has a bit of a different scent profile than the typical vintage, or especially like the typical vintage Guerlain. Despite being, almost 100 years old, I actually do not think this smells dated today. It's fresh and sweet, a lot less powdery than the classics from this era usually were. It smells really well blended and cohesive, even as it kind of shape shifts from the opening through the mid to the dry down. The lilac really shines here, but without it being a scent like, this is kind of an obscure reference, but Lilac Number 4 by Universal Flowering. That one is like very Soliflora, just lilac intense, and just too intense for my taste. But the way that this is done here is more like if anybody has tried Comme des Garçons self-titled 2011, that has a lilac note, and that's kind of like the more balanced touch to it, reminds me of that here. This also has like a creamy sweetness, but not in a cloying way, I would say. Then it gets more like rubbery, kind of slightly animalic as it dries down, and I like that phase as well. I love trying vintage scents for the historical, interesting aspect, but this is one that I also just like genuinely really like the smell of. And again, not just in a like, oh, nice vintage way, but just in general, period. Moderate longevity and projection, unisex leaning feminine, almost impossible to get a bottle, and if you did manage to find one, and it was even authentic, probably like $2,000 or something. But I will link in the description where you can get a sample or decant, but just be warned, those are very, very expensive as well. Like, I think close to $20 for a 0.25 milliliter, which is a quarter of this size. So, yeah.